Shaquil Barrett is no longer a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And for that, I'd like to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, and just general thoughts, plus one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to become an insider today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Jason Licht and Todd Bowles had plenty to say to the media at the scouting combine in Indianapolis on Tuesday. More on that in a little bit. But first, we have to start with the headline, and that is that Shaq Barrett is going to be released. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers will no longer have Shaq Barrett coming off the edge as news broke Tuesday morning that Barrett is going to be released. The initial news came from Ian Rappaport, but was confirmed by Jason Licht and Todd Bowles at the scouting combine, as well as by Barrett's wife on Instagram. Jason Licht told the media in Indianapolis, quote, "He's an incredible person, as you all know, obviously a tremendous player. Calling him and letting him know on Friday, I did not want to make that call. But at the same time, I wanted to give him some time to look for another team if that's what he wants to do. We can't officially release him until the beginning of the league year, but he actually called me and said how much the organization has meant to him when it really should have been the other way around." So Jordana, his whole family, they're always going to be Bucs, and we're always going to leave the door open for Shaq. Todd Bowles added, quote, "Shaq has been great for us over the last 5 years, but these tough decisions have to be made. Who knows? We'll see what happens down the line." And then finally, Shaq's wife, Jordana Barrett, on Instagram posted, quote, "Well, the news is out and we are sad, but truly it's a business. Tampa will forever hold such a special place in my heart. The community we have here is incredible. We've never felt so loved and valued. Thank you to the Bucs, who undoubtedly have become family. Through the hardest year of our lives, the love and support they gave us is unmatched, and we are forever thankful. Who knows where the next road will lead us, but for now, we're enjoying the offseason and are excited to see what's next." Shaq was reportedly open to a return to the Buccaneers in the right situation. And based off of Jason Licht and Todd Bowles' comments, they're open to that as well. But I think this is going to be a situation where the Bucs go younger, cheaper, and longer term at the position and draft a guy for the next 4 to 5 years. Shaq Barrett may honestly go down as one of the greatest free agent signings in franchise history. He played 5 seasons in Tampa, finished with 45 sacks, including, of course, that 19.5 sack season in 2019. He had 15 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 3 interceptions, 48 tackles for loss, had that pick 6 early in the 2023 season against the Bears to seal that victory, and, of course, was one of the biggest contributors for the Bucs when they went on to win Super Bowl 55. Unfortunately, the last 2 years have honestly been forgettable ones for Shaq. He ruptured his Achilles in 2022, and then last year with the personal tragedy of losing his daughter. And I'm sure that had some level of effect on his play last season. But Shaq Barrett, with only 7.5 sacks over his last 24 games played in these last 2 seasons, and that business side of the NFL kicked in, unable to justify the cost of Barrett moving forward. So as I've mentioned a few times on this show, Barrett will be designated a post-June 1 cut. So that's going to free up $5 million in cap space, but accounts for $9.3 million in dead money this year, and then $17.4 million in dead money next year. And we all kind of knew that this move was coming, especially got that feeling following the loss in Detroit back in January. This one, and then Russell Gage being on the chopping block were the 2 moves that I think most people believed would happen or will happen. But there's a big hole to fill on the roster now. And even though Barrett didn't produce the way you had hoped he would, he still had to be accounted for on every single snap. He was still a leader in the locker room. He was a leader on the field, and the Bucs have to find a way to replace that with someone new, and that is not going to be an easy task for Jason Licht and Todd Bowles. Edge rusher, if it was debatable before, I think is now unquestionably the Bucs' biggest offseason need. And I would think that if they made this move as a business decision, a financial decision, they won't be dipping into free agency to replace Shaq Barrett. They're going to look to get younger, cheaper in the draft, lock in a guy for 4 or 5 years, depending on when he's drafted. And unless they believe that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka took that next step and will be the starter opposite of Yaya Diaby, I just find it really hard to believe that they saw that in Tryon-Shoyinka. You can expect edge rusher to be probably a day 1, maybe a day 2 selection. So as much as Shaq was loved and will always be loved by Tampa fans, this move was kind of, you could see it coming and is almost officially done. As mentioned by Jason Licht, it can't be official until the new league year begins on March 13th. Jason Licht mentioned his feelings on bringing Mike Evans back. That's next here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Get buckets on your first bet with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, futures bets, and more. Right now, the Boston Celtics are favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 260, while defending champion Denver Nuggets are the favorites out of the Western Conference at plus 440. And FanDuel already has odds up for Super Bowl 59, where the San Francisco 49ers are the favorites at plus 500. The Kansas City Chiefs are plus 650 to go ahead and three-peat, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are tied with the New Orleans Saints, Las Vegas Raiders, Arizona Cardinals, and Seattle Seahawks at plus 7,500. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. I know in my life, I am constantly running around figuring out how I'm going to get my son to this tournament or that game while juggling my jobs as well as the financial aspect. But when all is said and done, I know that that's going to be what I look back on most fondly in my life. However, that doesn't alleviate the stress that it causes in the short term. Speaking to someone who is unbiased can give me an outsider's point of view and helps me compartmentalize the stresses I'm feeling while helping me see the bigger picture. And sometimes it's best to have that person to help you keep perspective. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listener review every single day. Coming up tomorrow, we will have more coming out of the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. But in the meantime, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Jason Licht, of course, talked about Mike Evans and bringing him back next season and beyond, and mentioned that it's going to be a strain, but they want to get it done. Licht told the media, quote, "He's an unprecedented player that we want him to be a Buck for life. We're working towards that. It takes two sides. I know he wants to be a Buck, but to get the deal done, we'll probably have to strain a little bit, but we're working towards that right now. But a good deal always takes some time for both sides," end quote. Well, that strain has already started in the form of letting Shaq Barrett go, but this appears to be picking up a little bit of momentum. And Jason is very clear on how much they are working towards getting that done. But he's right. It does take both sides. I went into that last week, that if Mike wants to go, there's nothing that is going to stop him from going. But it sounds like he wants to stick around. The Bucs obviously want him to stick around. It's just about both sides coming together and getting it done. Now, Todd Bowles also spoke about Mike on Good Morning Football and said, quote, "He had a career year last year. He's been doing it for a decade now. And obviously we want him to retire as a Buck, and everything we're trying to do, putting all our resources into signing him back as well, because Mike is great for the community. He's great for the team. He's great for the guys, and he's a heck of a ball player." Jason Licht also added, quote, "Trust me, we all want Mike." I think this should give Bucs fans some confidence that things are trending up when it comes to Mike Evans. It wasn't that long ago where the situation looked kind of worrisome and that there was a dark cloud hanging over the future. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that things can't fall apart and that Evans won't end up somewhere else. But over the last week, we've started to hear the rumblings about the Bucs working towards getting this done. And honestly, as painful as it may be, releasing Shaq is a step in that direction. Light already said that the Bucs are willing to put a strain on their financial situation to ensure that they keep Evans in Tampa and make him a Buck for life. So I don't think that the money is going to be an issue any longer. Jason Licht, Mike Greenberg, they're going to find out a way to work something out with Mike Evans' representation and get a deal done almost regardless of what the cost is going to be. They want Mike to stay in Tampa. Now, SpotTrack still has an estimated market value of $23.8 million per year. And I think this deal is going to end up being north of 25. But they being SpotTrack, have adjusted Baker's estimated market value to $27.1 million. That's about a $10 million jump over where it was in that estimated market value that I've been talking about on this show over the course of the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I think he might actually come in a little bit below that 27.1 million. But I think you're looking at a situation now where Mike and Baker are going to combine for a little over $50 million per year. And we'll talk about Baker more coming up in a little bit, but this is all a huge step in the right direction for the Buccaneers and Mike Evans. Now it's all about making sure the two sides dance together and don't let anyone cut in. We're still about 2 weeks away from the new league year beginning. And I think we're looking at the end of next week where there might be some breaking news. If they can get these deals done ahead of the open negotiating window, there may be some news about how they're close. There may be some news about how the Bucs are making a strong push. But no matter how you look at it, what we're seeing at this stage is that Jason Licht, Mike Greenberg, Todd Bowles are essentially all in on making sure that they retain Mike Evans next year. It's about what does Mike want, in term, in money, and those sorts of things, and trying to hammer out both of these sides working this deal out together. Yeah, the Shaq Barrett $9 million in dead cap hurts, but you also freed up $5 million in cap space that you can utilize. Remember, go back to a couple of times that I've talked about Russell Gage. That's going to free up another $10 million. If you're talking about Baker and Mike Evans combining for around $50 million a year, again, that doesn't mean that it's going to count $50 million against the cap. They can structure these contracts in ways where Mike can get his $25, $26, $27 million a year, but maybe in 2024, that cap hit is only $10 million or it's only $13 million or whatever the case may be. Now you're looking at a significant jump in his cap hit the following year or the year after that. And that's where a lot of this dead money comes in. They can put in the void years, knowing that after Mike Evans' deal is done, he's still going to count, $6 million towards the cap, the year after, another $8 million towards the cap the year after that. But you're also taking a look at a situation where the salary cap jumped over $10 million where it was estimated to be. So as the salary cap grows, obviously the hit on the salary cap that seems like a lot now doesn't take up as high of a percentage of the actual cap as you would normally see. So this, again, is all really, really good news for Bucs fans when you take a look at the desire and the drive, really, from Jason Licht to make sure that they're able to keep Mike Evans, and then knowing that Mike wants to make this deal happen as well. I think that's really what helps a lot, because it does take two sides. They have to figure out how to do this together. It cannot be a one-sided deal. The Bucs can't turn around and say, we're offering you this money, you're going to take it or you're not going to play. Mike can still walk, and he's still going to be probably the number one receiver on the open market now that T. Higgins has been franchise tagged. Now, I also saw some people talking about how Evans' deal is probably going to be north of $30 million a year. And to me, it's not going to get to that level. It just wouldn't make any sense for it to get to that level, not only for the Buccaneers, but also when you take a look at the landscape of the NFL. The highest paid receiver in the NFL is Tyreek Hill, and he's getting $30 million a year. I don't think Mike Evans is going to get that kind of money, number one, from the Bucs, but he's also not going to get that kind of money on the open market. You're looking now at the Bucs. If they're willing to go 25 or higher, that's going to be comparable to what any other team is going to offer Mike on the open market. They're not going to give him more money than Tyreek Hill in a free agent class that you could still get. Michael Pittman Jr., I think he's probably going to end up getting tagged before the deadline. But you have these other borderline number two receivers, and a team is not going to fork over $32 million for Mike Evans, who's entering his age 31 season. And you're only getting him for maybe 3-4 years. And you don't know if or when the decline comes in production, and that's no disrespect to Mike Evans, but Father Time is undefeated. The decline will happen at some point. It's just a matter of when. How gradual is it? Or is it going to be a steep drop off the cliff like we see with a lot of running backs, or we have seen with some receivers in the past where all of a sudden that production just isn't anywhere close to what a team thought it was going to be when they signed a guy to long term. So this deal, I feel, has the momentum and has the trajectory to get done before that open negotiating window. They may still go ahead and let Evans test free agency to see what that market does bear, knowing that they're going to be able to at least match, maybe even top whatever offers he gets out there. But who's going to throw him the football? Plenty was said about Baker Mayfield as well. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, brake kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Wrapping things up here on a Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs podcast. And of course, Jason Licht and Todd Bowles had to talk about Baker Mayfield as he is the highest profile pending free agent, not named Mike Evans. And not getting Mayfield back on the Buccaneers sends this team into a whole new rabbit hole of questions regarding the most important position on the field. But both Light and Bowles seemed confident in the way things are progressing with Baker, and they did talk about that at the Combine on Tuesday. So Bowles was speaking on Good Morning Football on NFL Network and said, quote, "It's an extremely high priority, obviously. We got a couple of days before the league year begins, but we love Baker. Baker had a heck of a year. He fit right in with us all the way around. The chemistry was outstanding with him and all the receivers and the offense as a whole. You hope to build on that. I understand the business side of it. We like Bake, and we hope things get worked out." Jason Licht was, of course, asked, and he told the media, quote, "Baker meant a lot to this team and this fan base in this town, and I think we meant a lot to him. And I think it was a perfect marriage. And I think I've said before, he sought us out. He gambled on us. He saw it as a good situation. He saw it better than a lot of national people who saw us with the two games. So he thought it would be good for him. And it certainly was. So I know he wants to be a Buck. We want him to be a Buck. So that's usually a good starting point." End quote. So much like the Mike Evans situation, things seem to be on the right track to bring Mayfield back. And we've known for some time that that's what the Bucs wanted to do. We've known for some time that that's what Baker wants to do. You go back to his media tour during Super Bowl week, talking about how much he wants to come back to the Bucs, and the hot mic situation, talking about how they need a couple of pieces here and there, and he feels that they're going to be a contender. You go back to the hiring of Liam Cohen as the offensive coordinator. That hire was made, and Liam Cohen talked about how excited he is to work with Baker Mayfield again, then had to correct himself and say potentially work with Baker Mayfield again. But Light also added, when he was asked about drafting a quarterback, that, quote, "You never rule anything out, but right now the focus is re-signing Baker." With the way things are trending and the open negotiating window starting on March 11th, that's 12 days from now, for those of you watching or listening on Wednesday, I start to get the feeling that at least one of these deals, if not both, will be done before the window opens. Now, if I had to guess between the two, I think Baker gets done first. And that's not because the Bucs are prioritizing Baker over Evans, but because that one might be a little bit easier to get worked out. Again, Jason Licht said he isn't scared to put a strain on the finances to make sure that Evans stays. And it's a lot easier to see where your finances are with the quarterback already locked in. And you go back to Light saying that they want him to be a Buck. Baker wants to be a Buck, and that's a good place to start. So these negotiations are already starting off on the right foot. They've been talking, they've been progressing. Rick Stroud reported last week that they had already started engaging in talks before going to Indianapolis, and those talks were going to continue in Indianapolis. But of course, you still have Antoine Winfield Jr. floating out there. And if the Bucs are going to tag him, that deadline is March 5th before 4:00 p.m. Eastern time. So we may get some news on Winfield's status sooner than later. But the main focus right now is on Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield. And that's the exact right approach for Jason Licht and the Buccaneers. As I mentioned earlier, SpotTrack has added about $10 million to Baker's estimated market value. But I also talked about how his contract could shake out back on Monday's episode. And I used Jimmy Garoppolo's deal as an example because I think that's kind of where Baker is going to fall, is right in that same range, which was 3 years, $72.75 million, $45 million guaranteed. I think he falls closer to that range than he does up near $30 million per year. So that's a little under $25 million a year. It's right at 15 million guaranteed per year on average. But it's all about the guaranteed money. They could give Baker an eye-popping number on the surface where fans are up in arms saying, I cannot believe the Buccaneers are giving Baker Mayfield that much money. They could give him a contract that shows on the surface that Baker's getting $30 or $35 million a year on average, but you have to remember to wait. You take a breath, wait for the details to emerge and find out how much is he getting guaranteed. And I think that's where you're going to see the difference between the initial news and what the Buccaneers are truly paying. Now, pretty much anything that they pay him this year is going to be a massive raise over what he got last year. But you also have to remember that the Bucs just took on nearly $18 million in dead cap next season with the release of Shaq Barrett. And of course, as each year goes on, that percentage drops because the cap is going to continue to go up. So what may seem like a strain, Jason Licht talking about he's not afraid to put a strain on the finances. What may look like a strain now may not be as big of a deal moving forward as you initially think. But at the end of the day, the message that I'm trying to get across here on this episode is if you're a Bucs fan, I would be very encouraged by the way things are trending. It looks like the Bucs are going to have Baker and Mike back before too long. And I still say Mike's deal is going to be the more difficult one to pull off. And there's still that lingering doubt and maybe a little bit of trepidation that maybe he does move on. But if both sides want to get a deal done, and from all accounts, it sounds like that's exactly what they want to do, then there's motivation there and they're going to find a way to make it work for both the Bucs and for Mike Evans. But don't be surprised if we get an announcement shortly after the combine that one or maybe both of these deals are completed. You're looking at it being about 2 weeks away from the start of the league year, that open negotiating window. I would say that I am 95% confident that at least one of these deals is done before the negotiation window. Maybe you're looking at Baker being done towards the end of next week or the beginning of the week after. And then you take a look at the Mike Evans situation. Maybe they say, look, this is the deal that we have right now. When that open negotiating window starts, I want you to find out what some of the other teams are that are interested, what they are offering you. Let's find out if our deal is comparable to their deals. And if someone's offering you a little bit better, we can work that out. We can put a strain on the finances. That's the theme of the show. We can put a strain on the finances and make sure that we are giving you the best deal possible for you, the best deal possible for us, and that you are going to be, from the start to the end of your career, a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you can do what even the great Jerry Rice didn't do. And you can play your entire Hall of Fame career right here with one franchise while you're out there breaking Jerry Rice's record this coming season. So with that, I am going to bid you all a fair adieu. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, more out of the NFL scouting combine. May or may not have Evan Klosky. I got to double check with him, but because of my schedule, can't sit down with him on Tuesdays, either yesterday or next week. But we will get all of that figured out. But no matter what, we are going to have a show for you tomorrow. In the meantime, please make sure you are checking out everything going on over at BucsNation.com. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Become a Locked On Bucs insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs to sign up today. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.